Hi Libra Sun and Rising. Welcome to your October 2022 Astro Update. It's Raina here. Well, we have arrived at Libra season, actually from late September, and even if your rising sign is what is in Libra, this means that in your natal chart, there's a lot going on in your first house, and that is going to have a similar effect to having your solar return because you're going to feel like there's a new cycle that is underway. And the the feeling that that may give you is one of change, is one of newness and freshness, whatever you want to call it. So it can feel very energizing. This is eclipse season because we have an eclipse in Scorpio, and then in November we have one in Taurus. So that's not just for you, but for the collective, a lot of change on that level too. But let's do this chronologically. And on the second of the month, Mercury goes direct. So this is going to be in the sign of Virgo, which is right before you. So this will be the 12th house. And something between the 12th and the first houses where the retrograde began in the house of yourself and then went back into the 12th house is quite interesting because it's almost like the conscious self and the unconscious self. And the unconscious self, it's not surprising that the 12th house is associated with self-defeating patterns because the 12th house is also karma, past life situations. So it's no surprising that if we have had a history of certain behaviors, that they have become unconscious. So this may be something that came up for you during that retrograde in the prior 3.5 weeks. Maybe some event that highlighted what you tend to do, maybe to please other people, that has a very deep-seated origin, and that you realize how injurious it is to you as an individual. An example of this is having a hard time asserting yourself and saying yes to things that you really don't want to. And then that leading to other feelings of helplessness or resentfulness or resentment. And we're trying to do things in our alignment with our highest good. We're not trying to do things that make other people happy at our expense. So those might have been issues in one way, shape, or form that you have been dealing with. Could even be with not necessarily your personal relationship, but even in the work environment. But anyway, you should start to feel like things are moving forward starting on the 2nd, and Pluto goes direct on the 8th. Now, Pluto's an outer planet, unlike Mercury, so it isn't necessarily going to be as influential in your personal life. However, for sure, when it is in a particular house, it is going to personalize this experience for you. And Capricorn for you is the 4th house of home and family. So if you have had, now Pluto does retrograde for months on end every year. So it's retrograde, like, I think they say 5 months out of the year. So that's a pretty big chunk of time. But if you had any, well, I'll just say in general, Pluto has been doing a number on your home life. And if you have children and a spouse, or you did, maybe that's in the past tense at this point. Pluto went into Capricorn in January of 2008, so that's how far back it goes. But if you've had some kind of major transformation when it comes to that, or you have really been exploring your childhood in recent years, this might have been a particularly introspective time where you had to do the deep work. And this can range from anything from energy healing to traditional psychotherapy. And for some of you, repressed memories may have come up in the past 14 years. And Pluto direct is at 26 Capricorn, but it's actually leaving Capricorn in March of 2023. So it's going to be moving forward and out of Capricorn in 6 months. On the 9th, there is a full moon at 16 degrees of Aries. Aries is your opposite sign. The house that this is occurring in is the 7th house that you rule. Now, this is important to note that this is a general reading, so all the house placements and timing that I give you are relatively speaking. Your chart is very individualized, and the times that these things are happening, if they will be happening in a particular house, are not guaranteed by this reading. But it gives us at least some basic idea of the energy surrounding you. So, full moons can bring very different results for very different situations. If you are in a relationship that is very toxic, this full moon may actually bring things to a head. And that's what I'm saying about this Mercury direct. You may say enough is enough. You may have already made up your mind that you're not going to tolerate certain things, and you have certain boundaries now. And this may test those boundaries. And what you have to understand, I think that some people, they don't like to hear things like this because they want to have a certain relationship. But if you do have a relationship where you don't feel heard, you don't feel seen, then that relationship isn't helping you. And sometimes Libra, it's almost compulsive, wanting a relationship, but it has to be a good one. You know what I mean? It's kind of like when you get hungry and you just will grab for anything, and then you're like, why did I eat this? Because it tastes like crap. It's that kind of situation. But it can also be that you develop more understanding of this individual. That you are, and you're understanding your part of the dance, because the time of a full moon is a time of where the sun is in the opposite sign and the opposite house. So that means the sun is in your first house, and it's glorifying you, which is very good when you're thinking about relationships, to think about your needs, but also highlighting you, putting you under the microscope maybe, and asking of you, are you doing things that add to the relationship too, or are you creating part of what is clashing? And who knows, this, for some people, this may be that you decide to get married or move in together, because this is the house of commitment. And people who are in an in-between stage, maybe you're monogamous, but you're still kind of dating, you're living in different places, you might just decide, hey, let's do this. Maybe not now, but in the near future. On the 10th, Mercury goes into Libra, so Mercury's in that house. I was thinking of a justice of the peace, because Mercury can be something that is very much connected to contracts, paperwork, and things like that. And the 7th house is our legal affairs. So any paperwork that you have to sign with a legal connection to it might be in play here, but also being in contact with someone. Maybe you have found out about a partner, or maybe you're back in contact with a partner, because this Mercury retrograde might have seen some of you. It started in your 7th house, okay? So now Mercury's going back into that house. Maybe you stopped speaking to someone, your partner, and you kind of like were estranged, and now you're at the time of the full moon, you realize certain things about that person, and you got back in contact with them. On the 23rd, it's very interesting, a lot going on. Venus goes into Scorpio, the Sun goes into Scorpio, and Saturn goes direct. Now, Saturn has been in Aquarius, and Aquarius squares to Scorpio, but this isn't relevant to this particular series of transits because they're at 0 degrees. So I'm just saying that that's what happens with Saturn, and that might be very important for us, especially going into November when the Sun and Venus and these inner planets start to get to the degree of the Sun sign. Of Saturn, to the same degree and form an actual square. That will create clashes, and Saturn can be authority figures. So that's more for the collective. Aquarius for you is your 5th house. So that's very interesting, I suppose, because this can be something with love is the 5th house. And when for single Libra individuals, when Saturn is in your 5th house, you can be very serious about the issue of love. Like the 5th house is kind of fun. It's about pleasure. It's about affairs, not necessarily settling down or anything like that. But when Saturn is there, you're looking at love for that purpose, not just to have a fling, but to have a solid relationship. And so, because Saturn has been retrograde, you may have kind of eased up on that. And now you're ready to get back down to brass tacks in terms of finding somebody. And I actually think that there's a lot to be said for easing up sometimes, because you have to be able to have fun with that person. If you're just looking for someone to settle down with, but you're not even checking to see if they have what it takes to just be, for you to get along with them on a daily basis in a fun way, then you might end up with somebody who's like a Capricorn, who might provide you with a feeling of safety because they're very disciplined and maybe they have really established themselves professionally and so on and so forth. But you may not have that sense of personality being in, being in harmony with one another. So make sure that you are not just being serious, but being realistic about the kind of person that is best for you. On the 28th, we have Jupiter, which is retrograding, going back into Pisces. So it had been in that 7th house, and now it's in the 6th house. You may receive some kind of job offer or opportunity that you missed out on when it first came around. And Jupiter can bring back, when it's retrograding, can bring back wonderful opportunities for you, and you just have to be open to taking them. And this can be within your own company, even. It doesn't have to be anything overseas. Maybe I said overseas. It doesn't have to be anything from a different employer or anything. But I was just thinking when I said overseas that if you were offered something overseas, if you were offered an opportunity to travel, it may come up again. And you may have been like, why did they have to ask me this now when I was taking care of something with my child or what have you? And now you're able to. Because Jupiter can be long distance travel. On the 29th, Mercury goes into Scorpio, and now we're starting to have, well, I didn't really mention those, the Venus in Scorpio and the Sun in Scorpio. This is the 2nd house of earned income. So Venus and the Sun went there on the 23rd, and Mercury goes there on the 29th. So this could be a good time for money to be very easy to attract with Venus here. But I think also you're putting a lot of attention on it, coming up with ideas for it. And this is going to be, I didn't put down the eclipse here. Am I crazy? Okay, well, let me tell you about the eclipse in Scorpio. It's occurring on the 25th of October, and it's at 2 degrees of Scorpio. Now, this is the first eclipse in Scorpio from this axis of Taurus and Scorpio that began back in the spring when we had an eclipse. Well, actually, come to think of it, a year ago, we had the first eclipse, and it was in Taurus. It was a lunar eclipse. Now, at that time, the sun was triggered because it was opposing it. So it, they are connected. And so here we go. We have a powerful new moon here. And this is in your earning potential. So whether it is different income streams, whether it's different ideas to implement in the future, which I think it might be, never look at the exact date of the eclipse as this is when it's going to happen. It could happen before or after, but just keep that in mind that if you see changes with your finances, there's a reason why. But go after opportunities. Scorpio represents other people's money, so there might be this way that especially if you are like starting your own business and you need capital or somebody offers to be like a silent business partner, that can be a godsend for you because you don't have to actually fork out any of your own dough. So anyway, on the 30th, Mars goes retrograde at 25 degrees of Gemini. As you probably have heard, Mars is going to be in Gemini until March of 2023. So it's going to be retrograding until January of 2023, which is a long time as well. I mean, end of October to the middle of January. So anyway, this is an air sign. This is occurring in your 9th house. So if you have been getting involved with yoga, this is the God house, but if you've been getting involved with kind of like these maybe self-improvement activities of some sort, Libra, that have like a spiritual connotation to them, you may be taking it inwards because that's what the retrograde represents. Working on the inside of yourself, or feeling like you can't travel, you can't do those things. I don't want to make world predictions, but I wouldn't be surprised there is some if there are some more restrictions. Just because, knowing the mindset of certain people, or thinking I know the mindset of certain people and what they're up to, I wouldn't be surprised. And knowing that the U.S. elections are coming in November, I wouldn't be surprised. But we'll see what happens. But regardless of what's happening on the outside, we can, you have the opportunity to delve within. There's a restlessness when Mars turns retrograde because it's like Mars can be anger. So it can feel like you have to shut your mouth. If you work in academia or you're a student there may be some kind of conflict that you are either told you are not allowed to speak on, or you just feel like you have to shut your mouth. And I mean, who knows? Maybe there's even legal reasons why you have to do that. But the point is that we can transmute energy. You know what I mean? And we don't. There are things. I really love the fact that they're really promoting this idea of calming the nervous system. And I don't know if this is specifically an exercise to do that, but I see people online like kind of shaking their limbs, like kind of like loosey-goosey. So it might be getting that excess energy out. And sometimes you might not even feel because you're like a mental sign. Well, I don't want to say mental, that's the mutable signs, but you're an air sign, so you're in the mind and you may be out of touch with your body. So being very aware of possible stress and trying to de-stress, even if you don't feel it, could be helpful. But yeah, because the ninth house is that feeling of freedom. And if for some reason during this retrograde you don't feel that freedom, you can have inner freedom. And nobody can take away that. So it just might be self-study rather than studying in a formal sense. Anything along those lines. And it's more to nourish the soul rather than to promote yourself career-wise or what have you. So that's what I have for you, Libra. I hope that this resonated. Happy birthday to all of you. And if you would like to look at your natal chart, if you would like to look at transits, they're upcoming with your own particular chart. I have individual readings, like transits readings, where it doesn't matter where it begins. It's just like for the next 12 months. And I look at important times to give you an idea of what to expect. Even if I give you dates, it's important to be as broad-minded as possible to see the bigger picture, And I do chart analysis. And I even combine those two full-length readings in a package called the Deep Dive. And that is more comprehensive, and it is a special price compared to buying two standalone readings. So please check me out I'm at rainamoonastrology.com. The link is below. Take care. Bye.